go to business making seminars after business making seminars, but you don't really get the secret to it. The unfair advantage is to rewire the way that you think. Hard work is the answer, and the harder you work, the more money you make. I can tell you with 100% certainty that it's not hard work that creates it. We've got to start asking better questions of ourselves, and when we do, we change our lives. And then you fucking hate yourself, and then you look at jumping off a bridge and say, my life isn't worth it. Because somebody painted a fantasy in your head and a fantasy in your life, and you don't know how to get out of it. Everyone is trying to project what they think is success onto other people without teaching people who they really are to be their authentic genius.
I didn't really have a choice, but I did. I could either fight for my life or give up and die. And I was so young, I knew I wanted to live. Even now, I'm more afraid of not living than I am of dying.
This is where it happens. This is where the entire show happens, and people come here from all over the world to heal their life. I want to share a couple ideas before we get into heavy content, because there's lots of content, but who this is for, right? I said a little while ago that there's people who are suffering with suicide, depression, and anxiety. And over my years, I've done a lot of work inside of this space. And it's not about, I'm just going to say this directly, and if it's okay with you, do I have the permission from you to be just who I am? I like to call it unapologetically authentic, right? If I say something that is maybe a little bit offensive, or I may say the word shit, or I may say, I may drop an F-bomb here or there, like, don't take it personal. Don't look beyond the statement, because maybe that one little glimpse is preventing you from seeing a life of performance, because this is get real. And I can't sit here and be inauthentic to you, because that would be unfair, right? If I'm asking you to show up and be real and be authentic, then I've got to show up and be real and authentic as well.
Business in the real world is very different than Master of Business Administration, an MBA, or a business administration degree. If we're not focused, we're not paying attention, sometimes we may miss something that may be one of the most catalyst things in the world. How we rewire our thinking is going to help us grow. Because right now, guys, when the world is contracting, it's our time as entrepreneurs to expand. It's our time to think differently, rewire ourselves to step ahead of the pack. The world is living in a different realm, but it seems like one by one, individual by individual, Adam, you guys are coming out, and we're all saying, hey, you know what? We can do things differently. We can stand up for ourselves. We can create a new opportunity. We can create solutions for people that will help serve them. And that's what we're about. That's what entrepreneurialism is about. We don't think about it that way. Because as an entrepreneur, you kind of got into the game probably because you love what you do. You are where you are today because of the pattern in your brain that lives there now. That's it. Whether it's your finances, your relationships, your wealth, your business, your customers you receive, it doesn't matter what it is. It's all 100% correlated to what's happening in your brain now. What happens when we think the way we do? What happens to our physiology? And I can tell you that as an entrepreneur, we as a community deal with more mental health challenges than anybody else. But isn't anxiety just another form of saying fear? Absolutely, 100%. Isn't depression just another word of saying a lack of motivation? It is. It's the same thing. Isn't the fact that anger towards your business, isn't that resentment and conflict resolution issues? Of course it is. We all deal with the psychological stuff, but as an entrepreneur, we don't label it that. We don't classify it as that because we don't fall under that. Because we won't fall under the realms of saying that we have an issue. And we'll fight. We'll fight harder than anyone else. We'll say, you know what? We cannot go down. We'll watch our motivational videos. We'll watch the YouTube videos in the morning, and we'll get fired up, and we'll charge ourselves up. And we'll go to programs and events, and we'll think that we can fire ourselves up to walk out only 3 to 4 days later to be in the same state that we were before. Only to fall prey to the same high and low that business gives us. We've all been to programs. We've all been to team trainings. We've all been to events that we've gone and we've got super excited, super elated. You thought you were going to take over the world, and then you walked away 3-4 days later and you realize there's more crap in your world that you've got to deal with. 72% of us deal with mental health issues. We just don't call it that. And today, mental health is obviously a big thing, and we have athletes who deal with it. We have celebrities that deal with it. But who's the entrepreneurs that deal with it? And we have programs that are telling people that, saying that it's about the mindset. Look, I am not a mindset guy. I'm going to lay the line in the sand right here. I am not a mindset guy, because your mindset is a collection of your habits, your thoughts, and your actions. It's a collection of them. So people say, I got to work on my mindset. No, you don't have to work on your mindset. You've got to know what the mindset is. You've got to know what your beliefs, your thoughts, and your habits are. You can't just sit and say, I'm going to arbitrarily change it. That doesn't do anything. I don't want you to chase success. I want you to heal. And heal is not curing anything. It's just an acronym. It's just an acronym that means helping energy align with love. Fantasies destroy your psychology. The number one reason people are depressed in this country is not because of drugs, medications, it's because of fantasies that we put in our head. And everyone fills those fantasies of positive thinking into your head. I'm not interested in doing that. I want to tell you the truth of how things are. We're into objective reality. Looking at things for what they are. And if you're not making money with it, that's okay. At least you know where you are. But you're not saying I'm an entrepreneur, introducing yourself as an entrepreneur, saying you're not. So let's not bullshit ourselves. Let's call things as they are. You say, this is the mantra that goes in your head over and over and over. You say to yourself, I want a better life, but truthfully, I'm scared. I'm really scared of it. And what you'll say to yourself is, you know what? I have a fear of failure. You don't have a fear of failure. You have a fear of letting go of what you think you have. You have a fear of an addiction that you're currently holding on to. You have a fear of letting go of what you're addicted to today. That's what's stopping you from moving forward. It's not the fear of the fear of success or fear of failure. That's nonsense. What you fear is letting go of what you have now. But then what happens when you start getting a little bit successful? Do you do the same things? Do you work as hard? Do you prospect as much? Do you talk to as many people as you did when you first started? No. Because now what are people going to lose? Because you've got social recognition now. Now you're a somebody. Truth is that that's what you lose. That's what you're stuck with. Just looking for the next dollar that's showing up in their door. And we've all been there. We've all seen it, right? Where people are just making money just to make money. And they're looking for the transactional value of the individual. They're just looking, I can make more money. I can crash another coin and call it a day. We've been taught and inundated and almost ingrained in our brains to sit and say, hard work is the answer. And the harder you work, the more money you make. I can tell you with 100% certainty that it's not hard work that creates it. I'm not interested in the hard work. I'm interested in the service. And I'll tell you that you can't outserve me. You can outwork me all you want to, but you can't outserve me. Because my intention is focused. And that's what takes the person to the next level. The intention of service gets you to the level of being an entrepreneur. It's not hard work. You're a business owner. They say that you make a couple $100,000 a year. You're the upper echelon of the world. Yet you look at your life and there's nothing of what you wanted inside of it. So let me ask you, is that really success? Or is that really just working? You could work a job and walk away with the same amount of income. That's the truth. But you've taken on the responsibility, the work, the effort, all of that stuff to say that you're a business owner. You're an entrepreneur. You are. You make all these sales, but you got nothing to show for it for yourself. It's a different way of existing. That's a lot of pressure. That pressure burns an entrepreneur out. It's called burnout. Today's children, today's environment, the millennials, people don't understand it, that the millennial generation, we can't manage millennials. No, it's not the millennials you can't manage. It's because you can't associate to what the millennials want. Because you haven't wired your brain to understand what they want. They want meaning. It's a wiser, more important culture. They want meaning. You get 4,000 hours on YouTube and they start paying you. You can make money doing that. Do you have to become a doctor, an engineer, or a lawyer? No, you don't. Not anymore. The way that money is created is different. We haven't adapted to them. It's not them having to adapt to us, right? We have these beliefs, these ideas about how things are. You are currently where you are because of the same root experiences or the patterns that you have in your brain today. Where you tried to build a business for everyone else on the outside, and you tried finding the cars, the houses, the things that would bring you success. And you found that you said, hey, look, if I show this jacket or I show this Louis Vuitton purse, it's going to make me feel better about myself. And unfortunately, you found yourself chasing success. You're not alone. We all go through that journey. It's part of the process inside of it. So I don't want you to beat yourself up. I want you to know that it's okay. Rewiring your psychology, rewiring your thinking is the most important step that you can take. I call it the unfair advantage. The unfair advantage to business is rewiring it. CEOs read lots of books. Founders don't. CEOs work for somebody. Founders create the business. Because everyone wants to read books. Everyone asks me, what book should I read? What book should I read? Don't read the books. Just learn what I've done and synopsize it. Use it for yourself. Because the more time you spend reading, the less time you have serving. But we have to serve. You have to serve inside of it. People are the answers. Their experiences are the answers. But when we don't, and we just listen to what people say, and we don't think for ourselves, we don't learn to think for ourselves, we end up chasing this thing, and we chase success. And you go to business making seminars after business making seminars, but you don't really get the secret to it all. The unfair advantage is to rewire the way that you think. It's not about just changing your mindset. It's about rewiring it, right? Because you've all been to other programs, you've all done other things, but you're still here. You're still here, and you said, you know what? There's a belief, there's a percentage. Maybe it's a percent, maybe it's 2% or 5% or 7%, maybe even 10%. That says, you know what? I can have a better life. You're saying I could do more, I could learn more, I could be more, I can expand more. And I congratulate you for that. Because so many people have quit. So many people have stopped. And you said, you know what? No, I'm not going to stop. I'm not where I want to be right now, but I'll learn and I'll continue to learn. The real problem is not that you don't work hard. The real problem is not that you're not committed to your vision. The real problem is not that you self-sabotage yourself. The real problem is not that you have limiting beliefs. The real problem is you haven't learned how to rewire your brain to allow everything else that you're doing to work in conjunction with it. That's the real problem. Learn one thing. Let's take that one thing today and begin the journey of a life of empowerment, inspiration, to grow and live the way that we want to. Self-sabotage. There's no such thing as a limiting belief. These are all bullshit things that people have said to you and us to make us believe that. To say that you're not good enough. Look, I'm going to tell you right now, you are good enough. Just exactly the way you are. You were designed with perfection. But you don't want to see it because you're living on everyone else's rules. Ladies and gentlemen, when you come to Rewire Your Life, it's about time for you to learn your rules. It's time for you to learn to see why you think the way you do. This is the process to begin that. It's for you to learn why you think the way that you do, not in someone else's box. Everyone says, be authentic, be you. Okay, but I got to follow everyone else's thought process in order to be me. How does that work? That's stupid. There's lots of seminars and teaching you, this is, if you're successful, want to be successful, this is how you should think. Great. I did that. That didn't work. If that's how successful people think, then why do they tell us to be original thinkers? Come on. We've got to start thinking. We've got to start asking better questions of ourselves. And when we do, we change our life. The journey of wealth begins by understanding who you are. To know who you are is the greatest wealth that there is. That's why we talk about wealth in my world. Wealth is the condition of being whole. Then you've got to actually talk about health and being whole, right? How do you become whole? If we look at the definition of health, it's actually not the condition of being healing. It's actually the condition of creating new cells in what I call money, because cells are replicated to money. If your business is not healthy, is it creating new money? No, it's not. If your business is not creating new money, it is sick. And if your business is not making money and it's getting sick and it's falling apart and breaking down, eventually, will it die? Yes, it will die. Because it needs to create new cells, new money, new energy. Money and cells go hand in hand. Our body is constantly making new cells. and constantly destroying cells. It's constantly building and destroying. Our money is constantly building and growing inside of your business as well. Everything that you think that's going on today is a compensation to a root experience that you had in the past that you haven't learned to heal. And we have these things in our life, and they affect different parts of our business. They affect different parts of our wealth. They affect different parts of our relationship, but we don't associate that because we look at our lives mechanistically. We say, I have a problem with money. That means the problem is just money. But wealth is holistic. So we've got to look at it and say, if this is the problem here, is that where the core source starts? Or is it something over here that happened? That's what we got to figure out. There's a saying that I've been known for, is whatever you resent, you resist. And whatever you have guilt towards, you give away towards. And so if you have guilt, you'll never hold on to money. You'll give it away. Because your self-worth and your net worth go hand in hand. If you don't value yourself, you can't value money. It's 100% interconnected. So if you've had these root experiences in your childhood, or in your divorce, or any part, or in your relationship, doesn't matter when they were. They could be from your childhood. We don't think about it. And here's what I'm going to say. Counselors are fantastic. Psychologists are great. Therapists are amazing people. But from all the therapists, counselors that I've met and talked and interviewed, they don't rewire. They have you express your feelings, but they don't remyelinate the brain. So you still stay stuck in the story, and the frequency is still that in your body. And so that pattern, whether you realize it or not, may not be conscious anymore, but it's still there. It's now just hidden in a corner somewhere else. And you hide it, and you play it as a facade, but it's still there. If those root experiences are staying there, you're living in compensation, and making the first million and losing it are all part of the cycle. The wealth doesn't grow. You live on the emotional roller coaster of high and low inside. In our brains, we have these patterns, as we said. And as we said, these patterns are in place. We now get these zones and states. There's two states. One is called the zone of desperation. The zone of desperation. And the zone of desperation is the state where you live in that negative root experience. And you don't realize it, it's a negative root experience. And it holds on to you, and you stay stuck in there. So a person who lives in the zone of desperation from a negative root experience will go look for a positive root experience. And they'll find that positive root experience. And they'll hold on to that. The problem with each of these is that you live on the high and low, the ups and downs, a roller coaster of life, where you don't have to. Because the truth is that when your body heals, it's actually in the zone of inspiration. It's in the middle. It's in the triangle in the middle. And this zone of inspiration is a different state. The unfair advantage is the rewiring process. Nobody talked about that. Nobody talked how they were in business and actually have real incomes and strategies to make that. They just put it on a wall and they come up. So I don't call them vision boards because those things are not visions for 99% of people. They're actually nightmares. Because you put it on a wall and you look at it and it doesn't show up. And so you constantly look at yourself in the mirror and say, you know what? I'm a failure because I'm not achieving my vision. And then you talk to your friends and your leaders and gurus, and they say, you know what? You're just self-sabotaging yourself, which makes you feel further guilt towards yourself. And then you resent yourself a little bit more. And then you fucking hate yourself, and then you look at jumping off a bridge and say, my life isn't worth it. Because somebody painted a fantasy in your head and a fantasy in your life, and you don't know how to get out of it. Because of the fantasy somebody told them when they put on that wall. They said, you're going to look like this, you're going to feel like this, you're going to have wealth like this. But that's not how you get it. And they continue to beat themselves up. Their self-esteem depreciates so low, and the guilt and shame and resentment towards themselves eats away at their life. And they ask themselves one question: what's the point of living? That's a dangerous state. But your self-calibrated mission is different. Where you're not looking at that and creating a fantasy, you're taking adaptability. You know what the mission is, that it's not up to other people on the outside, it's yours, uniquely yours, that you can adapt to it. And you sit and say, hey, here's this, it's coming at me, it's coming, here we go. And I can navigate through it. And I can use all pieces as a negative feedback system to help me grow. See, I think there's a problem. And I think there's a big problem in the market, in the world. I think the problem in the world is that everybody's trying to tell everyone what they're supposed to do. I think everyone's trying to tell people what they're supposed to be like and how they're supposed to think. Everyone is trying to project what they think is success onto other people without teaching people who they really are to be their authentic genius. I want you to be authentically, unapologetically authentic, where you don't have to worry about being someone else, where you can be yourself and not be afraid of that. Just to stand up in your own skin and say, this is who I am, and I'm okay with that. Whether you like me or don't like me, that's okay, because I know who I am. And I want to challenge you to learn to love who you are. You don't have to sit and live in the same past that you've been. You can change the way things are. You can change the way that you exist. You can totally rewire the path of your life. And it doesn't have to be an arbitrary process. If you're sick, struggling, frustrated, sick and tired of living in the same shadow, then take charge of it. I know for a fact that when you start to live inspired, it's not a mistake. You get to actually move. And you move from an ideapreneur to a propreneur, a propreneur to an entrepreneur to a successful entrepreneur to an unfulfilled entrepreneur, as weird as that sounds, and eventually to a legacy entrepreneur. It doesn't matter where you are along this path of this journey. What I know is this, is that the secret, the unfair advantage to you and your life is to rewire this so that you can see the path to process. Get this straight, and all that moves so much faster. Hey guys, welcome to the Rewire Your Life podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Alok Trivedi, aka Dr. Rewire. Today we've got a super inspiring guest for you. This guy he's a legend. He is literally a legend. He's done some amazing things in his life, but his accolades are world record bearing. I mean, seriously, he's climbed Mount Everest, which is, no simple feat on his own. But at the young age, Sean Swarner is a 2-time cancer survivor. He's the first cancer survivor to summit Mount Everest. He's the first cancer survivor to complete 7 summits. He's done the Hawaii Ironman finisher. He's the author of the book, Keep Climbing, How I Beat Cancer and Reached the Top of the World internationally, and he's an internationally renowned motivational speaker, president of Swarner Expeditions, co-founder of Cancer Climber Association, mountaineer climber. Please help me welcome Sean Swarner. Sean, thanks for being here, dude.
Hey, my pleasure, man. That's a hell of an intro. I'm honored to be here.
Well, you've lived it. I just read it. You actually lived it, man. That's pretty amazing.
Well, I mean, the thing is, in life, you can have excuses or you can overcome them. We were talking earlier. I had knee surgery 2 days ago, and here I am standing and doing an interview. And what's your excuse?
I don't know. I'm sitting, man. I'm like, what's my excuse? I feel bad now. You're standing. I mean, I'm just sitting.
Not you in particular, but just like the general you. Like, people always come up with excuses. Like, what's your excuse? Like, get off your butt and go do something.
It's so true. I couldn't agree with you more, right? But like your journey, like I want to dive into this. I've got questions prepared and all that stuff, but I want to kind of dive into you as a kid, because as a kid, you developed cancer twice, and at a very young age inside of that as well, 13 and 16 years old. And I'm sure it taught you so many valuable lessons. But on the Rewire Your Life podcast, I always say that you can either program your life or rewire your life consciously by using the tools, strategies in order to do it, or events in life are going to show you how to rewire your life and force you into doing it. Either way, you're going to move towards what you're designed and destined to do. That's kind of what I like to say. And in your case, 13 years old, you hear the diagnosis of cancer. What's running through your mind at that point in time?
Yeah, that's a great question. And to be honest with you, going back to it, there's a point I remember being 13 when I was diagnosed first cancer. And I was 60, 70 pounds overweight, bald from head to toe, on my hands and knees, in the shower. My hair was falling out in chunks. It was collecting the drain. The water was rising up in the shower. And I'm sobbing on my hands and knees with no hope left. And I'm thinking, okay, well, while I'm getting ready for school, what are my friends doing? Well, they're getting ready for school the same day. They're focused on, well, I mean, flash back to, say, freshman year in high school. It's a popularity contest, right? A guy who's bald, 60 pounds overweight, on his deathbed isn't going to be a popular guy. So I'm sitting there with a completely different perspective than most people my age. So I didn't really focus on what they were concerned about. That didn't bother me one bit. I mean, imagine going to bed night after night after night, being terrified to close your eyes because you don't know if they're going to open ever again. That became my evening routine, laying in bed, being terrified to fall asleep. So from a young age, I really developed a different perspective. And I think, going back to rewiring, I chose that perspective. I could have given up and died, or fought for my life, which is exactly what I did. And I chose to fight for my life. I chose to go after what I wanted, not the avoidance of what I didn't want, which is death.
Why did you choose that? Because I mean, I get it. I completely agree with what you're saying. But what made you say I want to choose this path versus the other? Because that there's a choice point, I think, in my experience and all the research I've done, that there's a choice point, especially with cancer survivors, that they actually say, okay, you know what? I'm going to switch the gear and I'm going to fight this thing, and I'm going to love this thing, or whatever methodology that they want to do, or I'm a victim to it. What was that thing that made you make that switch? Do you remember that?
I don't think there was one certain thing, and it's kind of going through anything traumatic. Just like anybody, I thought to myself over and over again, why me? Why me? Why the hell is this happening to me? But that didn't change the facts. The facts were I had cancer. Constantly asking why is this happening to me was never going to give me answers.
Sure.
So I finally decided, it is happening to me. These are the facts. What am I going to do about it?
That's it. The quality of your life is determined by the quality of the questions you ask. And that's an old saying. It's not mine by any means, but it's true, right? And you ask yourself a different question. So you go through this journey, and obviously you succeed. Then you go back to the doctor 3 years later and you hear it again. You're diagnosed the second time. Like, what's going through a 16-year-old kid at this point hearing it for the second time?
Well, the first one, honestly, I think I was a little too young to really, truly understand the ramifications of cancer.
Yeah, maybe. Sure.
The second time, however, I'm older. I've already gone through it once. I didn't want to go through it again. I knew I was going to lose my friends. I knew I was going to lose my hair. I knew my life was going to be on pause. And I think going back to your other question about what got me through it, or how did I look at it, and I honestly think it wasn't a fear of losing my life. It was just the image of what my parents' lives, what their lives would be like losing their firstborn son. I think that's what I didn't want to happen to them. I was more concerned about my parents than I was myself. And then the second time around, I really wanted to continue fighting. I thought to myself, looking up, why again?
Yeah, right, for sure.
Man?
I think every human being would ask that question, right? Everyone's got to ask that question. Like, again, really? Like,
yes. And it wasn't like I was, 16. I wasn't a smoker. I was healthy. I was an athlete. I was a competitive swimmer. I ran cross country. I ran track. I was the picture of health. And being the only person in the world to ever have these two cancers, doctors had no idea. They're two completely unrelated primary cancers.
Yeah.
The second time around, again, I say I didn't really have a choice, but I did. I could either fight for my life or give up and die. And I was so young, I knew I wanted to live. Even now, I'm more afraid of not living than I am of dying.
I love that answer. I'm afraid of not living than afraid of dying. Like, that's so powerful. Just that distinction. It's such an important distinction, right? Because you value life so much. And I always say, like, I know this is pretty basic, right? But you always value what you potentially could lose. That's when you learn to value it. And for you, like, you've lived your every day literally above ground is an amazing day, because you've gone through that journey where you feared mortality. So congratulations to you. And I don't want to, this conversation is not about cancer, but I have to set the premise of what you've done, because you've lost a lung in your treatment of this entire thing.
I did. The radiation therapy, I was also in a coma for a year of my life, and I was read my last rites. But there was so much radiation. There's so much scar tissue in my right lung now. I essentially have one fully functioning lung. So I had to learn to breathe again.
So you learn to breathe again, and you don't just say, you know what, I want to exist, I want to survive. You say, you know what, I want to go climb the highest point in the world, because, you know what, I want to live. I don't want to just live. I want to go to the next level, and I want to take it to the top. So tell me, what was that spark that said, you know what, I want to go climb Mount Everest? And then what was everyone saying around you when you decided to do it?
Oh, the second part of that question is so much easier to answer than the first one.
Yeah, right. I'm sure.
I remember, because I was working on my master's, my doctorate in Jacksonville, Florida, and my parents lived in Hilton Head at the time. So I remember hugging my dad before I drove out to Colorado, because the highest point in Florida is the top of the Four Seasons Hotel in Miami. I need to go train up some mountains. So I remember hugging him, and I still remember his voice in the back of my head, and he literally said, We didn't get you through 2 cancers to go kill yourself on a hunk of rock and ice. It's legitimate. I understand that. And also, sorry?
Completely fair, right? It's a fair statement.
Absolutely. And I also remember the doctors, my oncologist, he told me that he believed in me, but the majority of people told me it was physiologically impossible to climb Everest with one lung. They thought I was going to die. They thought that hypoxia would set in, or I'd get acute mountain sickness or pulmonary or cerebral edema. But again, that's like fueling the fire. When someone tells me I can't do something, I'm just going to turn around and just tell them, watch me, show them the proverbial middle finger and actually make it happen.
It's such this skill, right? And I love it. It's when someone says you can't, you're going to go out and show them how to do it better. And I've said this for many years, is that I think it's one of the hallmarks of champions. And it's the hallmarks of the guys like Jordan and Kobe, right? In the basketball world, or the Tiger Woods in golf, right? And back in the day, or anybody that's felt rejected so badly to do what it is that they wanted to do. They finally just said, they built enough resentment in the people around them to say, screw it, I'm just going to go do it. And they have to stand on the shoulders of everyone who's been around them, but they also have to let go of all the people that have come before them. Now, I say that to everyone because I want everyone to kind of hear this in his story, because we're going to take his story and we're going to rip it apart from the standpoint of neurology, and so that we all can learn from this from the standpoint that if any human being is stuck in a state of subordination, they lose the value of empowerment for themselves. And here's what Sean decided to do for himself. He said, you know what? I'm not going to sit and disempowered to other people. I'm going to move myself forward. What that does in the brain, that actually moves people from the amygdala more towards the limbic, towards the prefrontal cortex. So Sean, you sit and say, hey, look, I'm going to go move this mountain, for lack of better words, and I'm going to go start training. And everyone says, here's what we're going to do, how we're going to do it. How do you then begin the training process? And there's got to be days, I would assume, that you said, this is it, I'm done, I quit. And let's be real, because you can't sit and say never. That never happened, right? Like this morning's workout, I didn't want to do it. I did it anyways, right? But that's my comfy basement gym. You're climbing mountains. Tell me what's going on through your head in that capacity.
You're absolutely right. And I think even before I began, I had let me back up. It was never about Everest. It was never about getting to the top of Everest. It's what that represented to me. It's what that meant. Yeah. So diving deeper, I had more purpose behind the mountain. I had more meaning behind the mountain. And because I had a deeper purpose and a deeper meaning, it gave me a more passion to go after it. And it was to not necessarily be the first cancer survivor to climb Everest, but to show other people the possibilities of the human potential. And also maybe to still prove to myself that I was still alive. So every morning I woke up, I had a deeper purpose. I did have those bad days. However, when I did have those bad days, I'm a huge believer, and I'm guessing you are too, in the mind-body connection and vivid visualization. So every evening I went to bed, I would picture myself on the summit, taking the last few steps. I would incorporate the smell of the ozone, the styrofoam crunching of the snow under my feet, the radiation I could feel on my skin, and I would add in all the senses. That's where most people stop. However, again, going back to what the summit meant to me, how did I feel reaching that top point? How did I feel taking the last couple steps to literally the top of the world? And what did that mean to me? So as soon as I tapped into that deeper purpose, I had that passion, I had that meaning that continued pushing me forward every day. So whenever I had those doubts, whenever I was, for example, going up, there's a mountain called Deer Peak, say 13,000 feet, I was carrying 200 pounds in my backpack just to get my legs in shape. Did I want to do that? Absolutely not. But I knew that in my mind's eye, if I was already successful, the difficulty I was going through in the moment was absolutely worth it.
Only learned relationships with the one we've basically just watched other people. We watched our parents with it, we watched our families with it, and that's how we navigated it. So our beliefs, our stories, our relationships of what we currently have are simply just the stories that we've told ourselves of how relationships are supposed to be. And so because of that, we don't actually get to appreciate what relationships really are and creating them. What we do is we become reactive in our relationships versus proactive in creating them. And so we never get to really create relationship. What we do is we live patterns epigenetically of previous relationships. Constantly, we're navigating through this and we're reacting to what relationships are supposed to be. But now, you have a different environment that's changing, constantly changing, that's allowing people to think about things differently. You guys here are like the cream of the crop that obviously want to learn and grow and think differently. It's an amygdala-based response, which is lower in the cognitive awareness inside of it, because you're stuck in a pattern that is just on need basis, just survival in that. But based on those statements, every one of them is a place of survival. So if relationships are not high in your values, you'll consider them to be survival mechanisms versus thriving mechanisms inside that. Right? I want you to think about this from the premise of relationships for yourself. Like, what does it mean to have these beliefs, right? Like, maybe you sit and said that, you know what, intimacy is a chore. Maybe it's work. And then you look at your life and you look at your behavior and sit and say, well, why would I want to be intimate with anyone? Managing people, like, that's not really fun. And management is not fun. So why is my business stuck? Or leadership. It's scary. People are going to judge me. Then why would you create a business or a company or some sort of leadership type position? All of this has to do with how we relate to it inside of it. And all of it has to relate to our own judgments and fears. So our beliefs are the story we tell ourselves. And the story that we tell ourselves is the emotions that we've had in the past. And the emotions that we've had in the past is what's holding us up where we are today. Where we are today is 100% the identity we've held on to in the past. And if we're going to move forward from here, we've got to create a new identity. Your relationship will never grow the identity that you're in. It won't. It'll be impossible to. If your identity of a relationship is a chore, as Nate was saying, maybe something that's a lot of work and it's a responsibility and things that you need to get done, the relationship won't grow beyond that. You may have a partner next to you, but you're not going to be loving around that partner, because there's two types of love that I want to talk to you about. There's the animal love, which is the parts of yourself, which are the animals filling the needs, the lower part of the brain. And then there's I want to call it, for lack of better words here, the higher love. And this is the higher love where you feel a deep resonance of love with an individual. Not based on the premise of something that is chaotic, but rather a systematic approach to loving the person for all of who they are. That's what we want to get into. That's really where we want to take this. Because, in management, they say that love is not in business. If you can't take love out of business, I'm sorry, you just can't. Because leadership and business is about people. And if you don't love people for who they are, you can never lead an organization. If you don't love management, you can never lead an organization. If you don't love yourself, you can't lead others. Because the relationships you are in are not about the other person. The body is the conduit of consciousness, and it's the conduit of what's going on in the world around you. It's the conduit of telling you what's going right or wrong with your environment. So what your body is saying, what your hormones are saying, are telling you is how you perceive the relationships around you. The whole body is a neuroendocrine system. If we don't understand that the neurology controls our physiology through hormones, then we're going to create a lopsided answer to symptoms that will show up in our body. What we've got to do is understand how this whole thing works. And then you get to decide what you want to do. Because you don't need to be in a state of judgment with this person. You don't need to be in a state of chaos with this individual. You can actually be in a state of love with them because you love yourself. And if you want to love yourself, you have to love everything around you. And every experience as a part of it. And every person as a part of that experience. And the objectives of every relationship we're under is to make sure we get into balance with ourself and those around us. When we do, we access different glandular systems in our body. If you look at religious context of relationship, which is great, they talked about two souls coming together. think it's very valuable. Two souls, two pieces of light coming together to fulfill in each individual. It's about becoming whole in that relationship. It's about making a relationship about filling the parts of yourself that are missing. That's what the word fulfillment means. It means to fulfill yourself. But I just wanted to go through all of this. But when I say sugar management is how we use sugar, how do we use the sugar? The testosterone is going to have muscle, and they're going to use more sugar inside that. The estrogen is going to have less muscle, and they're going to actually have more fat, and they're going to hold on to that, right? But what uses more sugar, fat or muscle? Muscle. And so the testosterone uses more sugar, burns more calories, burns more sugars inside that. So the energy management of that is catabolic. And TSH controls the catabolism, breaks it down. And women are more estrogenic and more nurturing inside of that, right? That's why mothers, you're much more nurturing than a man is, right? You're much more nurturing. That's who you are by nature. That's what's made up to be you. And men, you're less. You're less inside that. If you're a single person, what is it? But as an individual, you're looking to become, in a relationship, you're looking for pieces that will fulfill you to fulfill the pituitary function, to open up yourself, which is the pineal function. Hormones of your system are determining how your body functions. And TSH is such an important hormone, the thyroid stimulating hormone. And if you were at creation, you understood growth and decay, for lack of better words here. And as an individual, how you grow and decay is just as important into the grand universal spectrum of this entire thing. Because a relationship wouldn't be valuable if it didn't fit into a whole puzzle. A relationship is not just for you to go boink around, have some sex once in a while, and call it a day. And like that's not the purpose of the relationship. It's got to fit into this grander matrix of the world and the grander matrix of the entire system, of the cosmos and the universe. How does it do that? How does our health play into that? And how do we navigate it? That's the purpose, and that's kind of the discussion. So how does this whole dynamic of relationships take place? How does this whole thing even start and begin in the early stages? So if we look at a relationship dynamic from the very early stages, the first relationship we have is our parents, right? Our mother, to be specific, inside that. Now we have a relationship with our father, of course, at some level, but it's our mom that's our first relationship. And our mother, being our first relationship, imparts upon us different genes, different pools, their emotions into us. How many people have realized at some point or another, until you made a conscious decision to be different, you basically relived the same patterns your parents did? Did anyone ever realize that? Okay, now I've got to be consciously different in how I'm going to structure and create my life. If not, I'm going to live the same pattern based on the DNA that my dad did. That makes pretty much logical sense, right? If you have the same pattern as someone else, you're going to follow the same pattern in the future. I said, okay, that's when you change the process of the psychology to, in essence, change the process of the methylation that happens in your DNA. Now you're looking at it and saying, okay, what does DNA have to do with attraction? Everything. Everything to do with attraction. Because you as a human being, me as a human being, we are not attracting into our life anything that does not fulfill our DNA at the smallest level. You are consciously not making a decision. Women, you are consciously not making a decision. Because your DNA and your neurology are looking for things that are corresponding to fulfill its values in a state of fight or flight at 0.008 of a second. You don't even consciously have the ability for the neuron to fire to the brain before you sit and say, I like this or I don't like this. The brain has already decided it. What's happening is that you are actually, your DNA that's methylated is looking for the opposite partner to fulfill that DNA. Attraction is not built on your cognitive awareness. It's built on a biochemical neuroendocrine response. And what you find attractive is just the things that are needed to procreate.
And frankly, it's the most important part of any success is how you think your way there. And so you talk about rewiring your brand. I see behind you, there's this Dr. Rewire brand.
Yeah.
Most people are wired wrong. And we're taught in school how to think like an employee, frankly, because we're trained by employees to get jobs in the world of employees. And employee minds are very different than entrepreneur minds. And I'm an entrepreneur-minded person. And therefore, it was like the whole educational system just missed me, completely. It just didn't teach me the mindset of an entrepreneur. You're an entrepreneur.
Yep.
We primarily teach entrepreneurs, but whether you're an employee-minded person or an entrepreneur-minded person, you got to rewire your brain if you want to succeed at anything, right? But I was more passionate about teaching, and eventually we discovered what we were placed on this planet to do, and we fail our way into it pretty much. We try a little bit of this, we try a little bit of that, and eventually we figure out that one. Like Archimedes said, he called it a lever and a place to stand. And so eventually we discover what our lever is and where we stand, what we stand for. And then we go out and we lever our strength, our purpose into the world. And we make the world a better place because of that. And so I've discovered that I was never going to change the world by buying a bunch of real estate. It's usually geographically located. The increase in rents is usually very limited. It wasn't exponential. It was very, very, limited. And so I said, if I want to reach the world, I just talked to 100 people at this seminar. I made 10 grand. But those 100 people, if they did what I told them to do, then they're going to impact their families and their families' families and their families' families, right? And that's impact. At the first, as I'm pretty immature at the beginning, most of us are, we are very self-oriented. We are like, I want this for me. Like it's my dream, right?
Yeah.
Eventually it gets to the we part. First it's me, then it goes to we. And the we is what happened. It happened for me when I got a letter from somebody and I was so stuck in my own goals, my million, my 10,000, my money.
All about you, right? And
exactly.
we all say that.
It's all about
me.
Exactly. Right. And then I get this letter from somebody and he says, you changed my life. And I didn't change his life. I taught him some knowledge that he used, but he used it, but it changed his life and he gave me credit for it. And I was totally, profoundly affected by that, because I realized, real estate is not where it's at for me. I want to teach people how to change their life. If real estate is a vehicle, great. I'll teach them that vehicle.
You could do, and you could have anything you want. What does that feel like for you? Because for some of you, that is, I want to spread my message to the world and I want to embody it and I want to tell everyone about what I do. And I want to help serve so many people, and I love that. But there's others of you in here who are saying, I don't really want to do that. I want to get some media and I want to get some credibility so that I can stay at home and be a mom with my kids and not have to worry about this 9-to-5 rat race. And that's cool too. Everyone's got a different space in this journey, but everyone's here for a different reason. Everyone's here for a different path. So what does that feel like for you? Because we're talking about the idea today of thinking big. Thinking big. I'm going to propose a different idea. I'm going to propose that you don't think big. And I'm going to propose that you be big. It's not about changing your why. I'm going to propose the idea that it's not about that. It's not about the why. It's actually about the why not. What's stopping you from getting to where you want to go? Because if everyone in this room has your vision, what stopped you from creating that last year? Or today? What stopped you from building it? We're going to have these excuses of some sort in our head and the story we're going to tell ourselves. And these stories are going to be these patterns we've built in our amygdala to sit and say, you're not good enough, you're not enough, why is someone listening? We're going to talk about that in just a bit here. But we're going to build ourselves these stories around this idea and say, well, maybe my why isn't enough. But it's not the reason of work, because everyone in this room works hard, I bet. Everyone in this room works hard. You work your tail off. You work really, really hard to do it. But the reality is it's probably something in the why not of the brain stopping you from showing up. And today we've got to figure what that is. We got to figure out what that why not is, because that why not is what's stopping you from moving forward. Because as soon as I said you could have whatever you want to, I heard the cheers. Everyone's like, oh yeah, let's go. But why aren't we creating that? Because what if those emotions were actually feedbacks? What if they're to tell us something about ourselves that maybe we're not in the right path that we need to be? Or we're deluded about some consciousness. Maybe we're not thinking about it in the way that we need to. That's stopping us from becoming the person we need to. Inspiration comes from within, motivation's getting to move. If you go to the root words, inspire means to breathe in. I'm a doctor at the end of the day. When you breathe in, you take oxygen into your body, you get oxygen to your brain, and you expand life into the world. And everyone in this room, I know, I can tell, wants to breathe more life into the world. That's why you want to take your message out to the world, which is amazing. The first fear is that you're not smart enough. You're not smart enough to do what it is you want to do. Whatever that is. To build media, to go write a pitch, to go tell people about your message, your service. Maybe you're going to compare yourself to other people. Or maybe you look at it and say, you know what, I don't have the capital, the funds to be able to do that. Or maybe you can say, you know what, maybe the loss of family. Because you can fight your path or you can heal your path. You can fight your path or you can sit and say, I can heal my path to get there. So as you think today, I want you to break free from the old patterns. You're going to get lots of strategy today, but I want you to break free from the pattern you're under. Because when you break free, that's when you're going to grow. What I've discovered is that there's 5 primary emotions. 5 primary emotions. And the first one, we've been talking about it all day. It's infatuation. The addiction to support, the addiction to getting someone's approval is an infatuation. If you compare yourself to what someone else has, you lose the essence of who you are. And that's where fear sits. Fear sits in the ability to see your own strength. So you'll judge yourself and you'll infatuate with other people. That infatuation eventually leads us down the path to resentment. And when you resent things, you're holding on to them. And that resentment is literally saying, because of this, I did this. And you become a victim of your own consciousness. If you can't see something from the amygdala, which is in the way, to the prefrontal cortex, which is on the way, then you're stuck in the pattern, and that's running your life. That's a story you will tell yourself for eternity. It's a story you'll tell yourself. Then you've got guilt. You've got pride, when you think you're better than everybody else. And not pride from the state, that I'm better. You don't have to do that. You could be quietly in your victim story and be in a state of pride, can't you? You could be in victimhood and be in pride. Until we don't take 100% accountability of ourselves and our life, we're never going to heal our stories. Then you've got the last one, which is the one that destroys us all on the inside, and it's shame. Infatuation, resentment, guilt, pride, and shame. And shame is the one that you don't express yourself with. You don't allow it to the world. You don't allow yourself to be free, be in that state of bigger, because you don't feel you deserve it. You don't feel that you're worthy of it, right? And the answer is not, hey, look, I did this because of all these things. That you're going to realize ultimately it's because I don't love me. And when you don't love yourself, I don't mean like an infatuation love, truly, authentically love who you are for all the things that you did that were positive and good, and all the things that made me the person that I am.
We get addicted to the things that are good, but not the things that are bad. The things that are bad is what made other things good. They're the things that made us grow inside of it. So understand that as you're living, as you're growing, these 5 primary emotions, they will be the ones that stop you from having your own self-love. They will be the things that stop you from expressing who you are into the world. So if you're going to look at it and say, I'm going to feel rejection, it's because you're going to hold on to one of these 5 emotions. One of these 5 emotions. And you don't know where it's going to be. Because see, the battle is not in strategy. The battle is in here. It's in here. And so I say that to you today. As long as you think the battle is outside of you, you're missing the war that's going on inside of you. So if you're going to break free and get yourself to the place where you want to express your life and live the reason why you want to, why you're going to be bigger, not just think bigger, why you're going to do what it is you say you're going to do, then I'm going to challenge you today not to look at your life and sit and say, you know what, I just got things to do. I'm going to challenge you to sit and say, it's not about doing, it's about being. It's about being from here forward. Don't just think bigger, feel bigger. Because your feeling is what's going to express into the world. My hope is that you take charge of your life, you break free, and you be big. Hey guys, if you like that video, click on the link over here and you're going to love the next video.